my mother just said to me on the phone, we're rooting for you for the Tonys, even though we don't think it's going to go your way.
That's exactly the kind of thing my parents would say too.
And I was like, yeah, well, I'm not going to disappoint you then.
Well, Ana Gasteyer, welcome to One Nightstand.
Thank you for having me.
I'm thrilled to have you here.
This is my favorite one night stand I've had in 35 years.
Oh, I'm very honoured for that title. You've had a busy few weeks with your Tony sort of efforts. How's it all been going?
It's super busy and it's super fulfilling, and I'm doing a job that synthesizes all the things I love, which is comedy and musical theater and staying home in New York. And I love the discipline. I love the rigor. And I've been doing this for 25 years, and I got nominated for a Tony, which is just a cool little moment of saying like, oh yeah, I guess I was on the right path, you know?
Totally.
So it's been really fulfilling.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. I mean, not a lot of downtime. But,
no, I'm sure.
Yeah. The tricky, funny thing about, I usually when you're doing film and television, you do the project and then you plug the project, and there's sort of press mode and regular mode. But when you're in theater, you're sort of talking about what you're doing all day, and then you go and do it all day, every night. So it is sort of like having two days in a day every day. Yeah.
That's interesting. That's a lot of pressure as well.
I mean, I'm too tired to care. But yeah.
I love that.
I did get to see both of my children for about 22 seconds this morning, so that was nice.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Have you always been a big reader?
Yeah. I will, though, credit my extremely prolifically reading daughter. Prolifically, is that a word? My daughter Frances, who's 20, she'll be 24, is a voracious reader. She's a writer and a playwright in her own right, and I will say that her consumption of books has influenced mine considerably. She has great taste, and my mother's a ceramic artist and is in her 80s and is an Audible consumer. So we have a Libby account and we have an Audible account, and so we're all sort of connected through books a lot. Yeah.
With your daughter, is there anything that you've read when she was younger to like read along with her?
Yeah, well, that was a big part of my connection to them as a mom. Of course, reading to them was probably one of my favorite things to do. So we did the whole Harry Potter series, and my favorite childhood book is a book called A Little Princess by Frances Hodgson Burnett.
Lovely.
And I think I've probably reread that book. It's interesting because you read it as one sort of story, like a princess, lucky girl kind of story, and then as you get older, you realize that it's such a story about manifestation and about the power of positive thinking. And there's so many little moments in that book where she visualizes or sort of chooses the more half full option on things and is rewarded by the universe for it. It's really cool. She's really in control of her own narrative, even though she's the most dejected, destitute child in the story.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it's really magical.
Are you a manifesting person?
I'm not very woo-woo like presenting, but I do believe a lot of that stuff. Like my son is a cross-country runner, and there's a lot of I read a lot of sports psychology because I'm super interested in the crossover between athletics and performance, which are very, very similar. There's a lot of studies that show when you smile when you're racing, you race a better end race. Smiling actually like shoots off signals to the brain. I'm playing a villain, so that's somewhat problematic, so I don't really smile during my show. I try to smile backstage more. But I think that we do have I do think our thoughts have a lot of power.
I agree.
I think that that especially in a really complicated, very sad world right now, at times, dialing into and social media in particular, I think is such a destructive force with the algorithm's addiction to negative emotions, negative thoughts. It really, anyone can feel it. You start scrolling. That's the argument for reading that's coming back more and more. You start scrolling and you're
sucked in.
I call it like scratching the scab. You're like picking at a scab. That's the reason they call it doom scrolling.
Yeah.
So putting that away and dialing, or either like following puppies, which most of us now do, and people falling, which is my other sad vice, is if reading 20 minutes before bed is such a game changer. And also just the neuroscience, like all those, I don't know if you follow all that stuff too, but all the studies that show like the way that we synthesize story and learn about our brain, like our brains rewire from reading.
I'm still listening to it, but Peak Performance, the book, one of the books that nearly made the cut for the final one. It's great on all that stuff.
Isn't it amazing?
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting. And I like definitely have that kind of British skepticism about a lot of those things.
Yeah.
I'm like, but then I'm like, when the data, like, who cares? Like, who cares how the sausage gets made if it gets you where you need to go?
And at the end of the day, like, you've got to get up and hope. Hope is like, I love theater, right? I love, I just saw Every Brilliant Thing. I don't know if you saw it with Dan Radcliffe. And
so good.
Like, it's such a beautiful play. And it is so true that it's just, hope is our defining option, like as human beings, whatever it is. Like if we can create a sense of hope and optimism, there's a lot that can happen.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm a comedian, so like it's actually funny, the role that I'm playing, I play the villain, I play the bad guy in Schmigadoon, which is always fun because it's much more fun to play the bad guys, as everyone knows, Miss Minchin versus the princess. But it was at the same time important to me that I played a bad guy 2 Broadway seasons in a row because I did Queen Agravain last year and Once Upon a Mattress, and I play the bad Mildred Layton. And I do like to play bad guys that believe that their rationale has purpose, that it's not just meanness for mean's sake. They definitely think they're holding up a standard or whatever, love for their son, protection, whatever the motivation is. But I did get a redemptive arc in Once Upon a Mattress. In Schmigadoon.
Yeah, you really do.
I get a redemptive arc in Schmigadoon where I get to kind of see the light that maybe thinking about things differently and allowing for a future and through change it's really nice. It's a tiny moment, but it makes all the difference.
No, it does make all the difference, and it's impactful. And you also get a hint of the why, that I think is really with the daughter. And
it's fascinating, right?
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting.
Why people button up.
Yes, exactly. Talking of social media, I'm obsessed with September L. Davis.
Oh yes, I'm aware of her.
Yeah, she's. Do you think she'll be showing up to the Tonys in any way?
I think she would like to. I think my understanding is that she's petitioning to be in the in memoriam right now.
That's what I'm hearing.
She died for 6 seconds.
That's
so
right.
There has been somewhat of I think there might be a Change.org petition on her behalf. She has a really rabid fan base, which as her perceived enemy, I've been on the wrong side of sometimes. But the media loves a feud, and that's been fed. I think she's an enormously talented Broadway actress, and I think she's burned some bridges, and I think she might need to make some amends, but I wish her the best.
Great. Well, I'm excited to see where the Change.org petition goes. Okay, well, let's get into the books. I thought we could start with Shy by Mary Rogers, which is so good.
Isn't it delicious?
And the like little asides with the fact checking is so funny.
I love the way it's constructed because Jesse Greene, who was the longtime theater critic at the New York Times and clearly a beloved, a lover of the American theater, the tradition of American theater, fabulous women, and this just like incredible dynasty of musical theater talent. I mean, it's the fact that even her son Adam Gettle is this amazing composer, as who wrote Light in the Piazza and other things. I read the book sort of as like in conversation between the two of them. It's not even like footnotes. It's almost like he's just like, by the way, this is what you meant. I was born in the wrong era. I really wish I had been born to really thrive in the late 50s in New York City. I loved it. I started reading it because I was in Once Upon a Mattress.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
I actually started reading it before that, and then I put it down because I got busy. And then once I got cast in, and she covers the creative process of how she made Once Upon a Mattress. So that was super compelling to me. But I've recommended it to about 100 people.
Yeah, it's really special, and it's so. I mean, there's something about the arc of publishing, saying that they can publish once you're dead, that I think is a really like sort of interesting kind of model.
She's very candid.
Yeah.
She's very, I also just find it, I don't know if you do, but like, I don't read that many memoirs, but when I do about an interesting personality, like the common threads, we always think things are because maybe people had more decorum or there was more sort of proper presentation, but looking back and saying like, well, basically every guy was gay in the 50s in New York anyway, even if it was like there were morality laws. Like people are just people.
Yes.
That's what's so cool. Or like, I was also really moved by, I don't know if you dialed in on that even I just reread that chapter on Larry Hart after I saw
I don't remember that one.
Blue Moon, the movie that Ethan Hawke was in. again, he was the original collaborator with Rodgers and Hart before Rodgers and Hammerstein, and was a terrible alcoholic and probably in the closet, and a sort of tragic life. But he wrote My Funny Valentine. Like, the music that they wrote together was extraordinary. So just hearing her sort of like childhood reminiscences of that, and then of course the huge tragedies that she sustained as a mother, and just an amazing person.
Totally.
And she wrote Freaky Friday.
That part blew my mind as well.
I know. I love looking at a whole life and thinking, I really like getting older. I just do. I think it's so cool to look back and be like, a whole bunch of stuff ends up getting stitched together.
Exactly.
You have no control over it. I mean, you might have some, but just keep trying to make stuff, because eventually it all makes sense.
Exactly. And I love the idea of that diversification of her just being like, I'm going to take a swing. I'm going to try and do something.
Yeah, I'm going to write stories. First, she started writing songs for children because she was a woman, and they were like, well, you have to just write children's songs.
Yeah.
And they turned out to be very, very clever. And then she wrote essentially adult summer camp shows, which turned into Once Upon a Mattress, which was a hit Broadway musical, which then has it's one of the most produced musicals in American high schools.
That's right.
And then wrote Freaky Friday. I mean, she's amazing.
Completely amazing. I thought the portrayal of the relationship with her parents is really sort of, I mean, it's she handles it with such humor and such grace, but these moments where she's saying that they keep saying to her, we love you, but we don't like you. I'm like, it's so brutal. And she does it in a way that's so funny at the same time.
I mean, my mother just said to me on the phone, we're rooting for you for the Tonys, even though we don't think it's going to go your way.
That's exactly the kind of thing my parents would say too.
And I was like, well, I'm not going to disappoint you then.
But, yeah.
I mean, makes you what you are.
I know. My parents were like that even when I was little. They'd be like, it's unlikely, but sure.
Yeah. I remember saying, because I found out that you could study drama at Yale. And I was like, I'm going to try to go to Yale, because then I can study drama and I can go to a really good college. My dad said, well, you'd be hard pressed to get in there. So, it was a different time.
Did you have fun at Northwestern?
Loved it.
Yeah.
It was again, Mary Rodgers style. I don't know how I do know how I got in. I sang my way in. Amazing. I sang into the voice school. I was a proper voice major.
Yeah.
And I got rejected everywhere else. It was the hardest school I applied to. I got in. I dropped out of music within a year because I met the comedy people, and it changed my life.
Wow.
I met so many. I had no idea. I'd never even visited. I just went because it was the school I got into.
That's amazing. Why do you think Chicago does have such a big comedy scene? And
I mean, it's not even just Chicago. It's I actually last year, I just know this, Chicago, because I went to the improv group at the college, was very beloved, and a lot of now established Seth Meyers, Julie Louis-Dreyfus, established comedic alumni were in this show called The Meow Show. So I went to the reunion, but the reunion, I found out it was started the same year as the Groundlings, which was my theater company in Los Angeles, and Saturday Night Live was 1975. So I think it was more probably political and cultural, that there was probably a time and place for parody and social criticism necessary, and satire. Yeah, that's my guess. And improv was a very radical form of performance at the time.
That's
and
so
creative process. Yeah. So I think I just found those people, and I was like, I like these people. So then I went out to LA and tried, worked my way into the Groundlings.
I love that.
Yeah.
I saw in an interview that Julia Louis-Dreyfus said that she babysat you and her sister when.
So her little sister she was a bit older than us, and her little sister was my best friend.
Oh.
Yeah.
And do you remember her babysitting you? What was she like as a babysitter?
She hated us. She would just ignore us. Yeah. Because she was high school. She was cool. Yeah. We were we were in 6th grade or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were just the annoying little sister knocking around.
I mean, we were I had just found a report card about my friend Amy, her little sister, who was a very funny person, where the English teacher said Anna and Amy would be better suited not trying to spend so much time imitating Laurel and Hardy. And I remember being like, who are Laurel and Hardy?
That's amazing.
I know.
That's brilliant.
And then that same English teacher in high school also wrote a personal just about me, saying Anna should not spend so much time with rehearsing and a bit more time on her schoolwork. Turns out he was wrong.
Yeah, literally. I love that.
Bob Thomason.
I'll
never forget. I'm a Taurus.
The best revenge. One thing that I think that Shy does really well is also kind of gets at the weight of being like the child of somebody like so successful. And I wonder how, because you know, you've mentioned that your daughter is a playwright and that she wants to sort of is breaking into this industry as well. How do you manage that as a mom?
I was just thinking about how the song that I actually sang in Mattress Sensitivity, it's written in 5/4 time. It's written in a very unusual time signature. And she says in the book that it was the only song her father ever complimented her on, which, because or maybe not that he only song he complimented, he was like, I never could have written that song. I will say, I'm not always aware of I try to be aware of the bigness of all of it, of my personality and my career. But my daughter has what is the coolest thing about parenting is that you think you're going to pass on all of these things, right? And sometimes they're all the wrong things. They're like your workaholism or like something that you don't like about yourself. You know what I mean? Like that you are petty about grievances about Bob Thomason from high school. And you think you're just handing off the good things. But the beauty of it is, and she'll be mad at me for saying this on whatever medium this is in public, she has a gift for writing that I do not have. I write by necessity because I have to, because I'm a writer performer and I collaborate well with people and I like writing comedy characters and things. She won the Young Arts Prize for playwriting. She was an honoree for her fiction. She writes beautiful plays. She has always, from very, very little, like 3 or 4, understood how to tell a story. And it's not a skill I have. And it's the coolest thing. Yeah. She's a wonderful piano player. She could give one shit about playing the piano. Like it used to drive me crazy because she has touch, which is very hard, right? Like in piano, my son slams on the keys. She like can play the piano. And it used to drive me insane. And my husband said, you can't teach passion. Like you can't make somebody be passionate about something they're not into. Even though I'd be like, why isn't she not practicing more? She's so good, But the writing, she just does. She does it on her own. She has ideas. She comes home with ideas. She's like, and writing's a hard life. I mean, it's not like she has to be a writer. She doesn't want to. She's a wonderful actress. She's a lot of things. But it's very cool to watch somebody outside of yourself just come onto the planet with a thing that you didn't plan for, And I think that must have been how my folks felt about me I found these old recordings my dad just sent of me singing Annie Get Your Gun in 7th grade when I was the lead. And it was an audio cassette. I just had it transferred over. And I'm like, they must have been like, who is this? Like, they're not performers. No. They're not,
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Answering your question? I'm really tired, so I'm just speaking.
No, totally. I think it's so interesting, isn't it? Because I think I have a lot of empathy for sort of the children who get caught up in like the Nepo baby discourse, because I also just think like if it's what you enjoy and you even know that that's a path that is a viable job, I think it's really hard to just be like, no, actually I want to go and...
Well, Andrea Martin, I remember when Frances was a baby, I was nursing her, and somebody was, we were in rehearsal for something, and somebody was like, I hope my kids don't go into theater, some bitter. And she was like, why? Yeah. It's so fun.
Exactly.
I wish my kids would do this.
Yeah.
What we do for a living it was such a nice way of looking at it. Like it's very hard. And I understand. I think parents want to protect their children from the painful parts of things.
Yeah.
And look, she's 24, like my oldest one. And I can't give her career. Like no. she has to get things if she wants them. Yeah. So I agree with you about the Nepo baby. And again, the internet will probably come for me, but I don't know. You don't get mad at somebody whose dad is a dermatologist who wants to be a dermatologist. Like, I understand that the advantage is frustrating if you've had to make your own way. Yeah. But no matter what, you've got to get called back. Yeah. You've got to keep, and this is something, I see with lots of young people, like that thing that what makes the difference between actors who work and who don't, I swear to you, or any creative fulfillment, any job, is that when you hear no, back to Little Princess, you see a positive in it. So and I got rejected all the time. I didn't look like anybody who was on television in the 1990s. Yeah. I was not blonde. I was not blue-eyed. And believe it or not, like we have a joke, like ethnic in the 90s. Like I was like, now I look patrician, but I was like the weird, friend, and I just never thought I would be entitled to those roles. They didn't exist.
Yeah.
So every callback I would get, I would think, wow, I got called back. Something must be going right. And the only person who can do that is you.
Totally. I agree.
So I can't make my kids do that. They're going to have to figure that out. And that may just be like, luckily my daughter's really good at a lot of things. She's substitute teaching. She really enjoys that. She's, she has a lot of like things she's good at and likes. She's a linguist in school. So, I mean, we'll see what happens, but.
I love that. And I just was also interested, I think the idea of the book really captures how memory is this sort of like quite pliable thing. And like, I have two sisters and we are always like catching each other out with our memories and then them fact checking it. And we are always trying to be like, work out who's right. Have you ever had a moment where you've like had a really clear memory of someone and then someone's like, no, that's not how it happened?
100%. And my brother and I have such hilariously different takes on our childhood. And it's fun. Now that we're older and we might like see one another's point of view a little bit more, but yeah, it is great. And she's so, again, it's interesting that it's a memoir because you feel like you're reading the brain of a 20-year-old in a lot of ways.
I completely agree.
Which is a gift.
Yes. And it's also, and this is kind of a theme in Long Island Compromise as well, that there's such a like
huge
darkness, but also so much levity. Like in how she's able to thread the needle on that, I think is so skilled.
I was so impressed by Long Island Compromise for that reason. I mean, there's and how I took this family therapy class in college, like a psychology class or whatever, and I don't remember anything about it except for this one thing which I always have thought about, which relates to both things that we were just talking about. In a family, I remember it was like a model idea in like a clinical discourse that a family's a mobile, right? Like a Calder, think about, and that all actions, good and bad, impact everybody. That you would like pull like a car accident, like would float over here in a different way, or like somebody becomes famous. So I feel like Long Island Compromise, she does such an incredible balancing act of that, like within those ecosystems, how one event can kind of do it. And she also manages to capture the sort of hilarity and lunacy of an era and a regional, like it's very American.
Totally.
The idea of being like a scion, but also like the pressures of that, but also the sort of everyone's perspective on the isolation of being a Jewish American family, but also being a super successful family and an immigrant family. Like there's so many different ways to sort of spin the story. Totally. And I loved it. I read it twice.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I really loved it.
Wow. Did you first read it when it came out, and then did you read it?
And then I re-recommended it to Frances and then to you, and I found it, and she's just a very lively writer. I don't know how else to put it.
I know.
And she's a journalist.
Yeah, she is. She writes profiles.
Yeah, which is really interesting too, because I also just love it when people try on different suits and they fit well.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
And when they adapted her first novel, Fleischman is in Trouble, she was the showrunner. Which, it's they don't often let the novelist do that.
No.
And she did a great job. It was really good with Claire Danes,
really
and
impressive writer.
Yeah. Tell me what else you loved about that book. What sort of most drew you in?
I mean, this is where I'm bad, because I'm just gonna. I'm like in my family, I'm known for the vibe check, and then Frances, my daughter, is always the one that's like, when we're watching the movie and she's like, remember, because he was the dentist, and well, first of all, I thought she captured Hollywood culture obscenely well. Like I've thought about that far too often, and she goes places that are like very ugly.
Yeah.
But I've thought about it.
Yeah.
And it's dark, again, like you said, dark comedy. And
the Hollywood stuff is very good.
It's so good.
It's so good, and it's so funny, and she really like pulls you along through the world, and sort of, I think she, like you say, she brings the sort of like glamour, but also the sort of like ugly underbelly. Yeah,
and self-hate, and how we hurt ourselves in reaction to things.
Yeah.
What did you like the best?
I read it, I was looking at my phone in the summer of 2024, and I just had all these pictures of me like sort of reading it in my parents' back garden, and so I was trying to remember how I felt when I read it, and I think I remember not liking a lot of almost all the characters, but also feeling so propulsed forward, which I think is such a skill to write something where you maybe don't even in that moment feel like you like it.
It's hard to know who to root for.
But you can't put it down.
But I did feel like it was the system overall, the family system, sort of the connective tissue that wins the story in a weird way. And that I think I feel like I've read a lot of these books lately, like Nathan Hill's books. Have you read those?
No.
Like The Knicks, and there's a wellness book that he read last year that they're really interesting, like character vignettes, which this could have fallen into. But I feel like the funeral sequences and the sort of like wrap up, the actual mystery plot of it is really expertly crafted.
It's so well crafted.
Yeah.
I gobbled it up so fast.
Yeah, so that you're not just sort of wading through really sad chapters about crazy people.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see if they adapt it.
I know, I'm curious.
Yeah. Do you ever read things with the goal of like being in an adaptation?
I would like nothing more than to adapt Shy.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Yes.
but they're because I think it would make a fantastic series.
Yes.
I mean, also because I am just like a New York. I just, like I said, I want to live like in the Russian tea room, like, you know what I mean? Like there's this part of me that just, when I go to Carnegie Hall or I go, like there's the Carlisle, I play the car, like there's a lot of that life, that Mrs. Maisel kind of vibe that would be so fun just to live in. But also the authenticity, and also just she's just an amazing person. And again, I'm probably more negative secretly. And so I think the optimism is just infectious and contagious.
Yeah,
and,
I agree.
And I've always wanted to be those ideas of those sort of magnanimous women that like collected sort of children and husbands and friends and sang around the piano. There's just something so powerful to me about that. I've always had a piano as soon as I could afford one. I don't play the piano, I just sing, but I've always felt like it's not a real apartment until you have a piano.
Oh, I love that.
So I have a piano everywhere I live. So yeah.
Oh, wow.
And because my secret party tip is, it's like the cheapest, easiest way to have a great party. People think of it as a very fancy thing, but you can actually hire a piano player for like way less than you could pay, a caterer or a bartender.
That's so smart.
And then you can have someone playing the piano for 2 hours, and people walk into your party and they're like, the piano is playing.
That's lovely.
It's so fun.
Did you, for the years that you worked on SNL, how did you stay connected to your musical side? Because it seems like such an all-encompassing experience.
SNL?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was more just at that time something in my suitcase.
Yes.
Yeah, my trick bag.
Yeah.
And luckily, like, there are lots of comedians tend to be pretty musical people. So Will Ferrell's dad's a professional musician. Maya's mom was Minnie Riperton. Her dad's a music producer. James Anderson was a Broadway singer. Paula Pell was a trained musical theater person. So a lot of us just sort of made music-y things together. Keenan's very funny. Musically.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Talk to me about doing SNL 50 with Will Ferrell.
Incredible.
It was
so much fun. Speaking of that, and it made me so happy because there were sort of two nights, there was the music night and then there was the regular night. And, understandably, they were like focused on the night, which was the 50th. So, early on there had been whisperings. They were like, it's a music thing. They'll probably call you to do like this, that, or the other, which they did. And it ended up being Bobby and Marty in Radio City Music Hall, which after Lauryn Hill, it was hilarious. And it was such a joy machine because the characters are so fun to write. Paula Pell is one of my favorite comedians on earth, and to work with her and write with her is nothing ever short of like a gift from the universe. And I just went up to her place upstate and we wrote for, hung around, drank wine and wrote for a couple of days. And then we didn't know what it was going to evolve into because all things SNL evolve as they're happening. But then the fact that it was Bobby and Marty in Radio City was making me and Will so happy because we were, first of all, dressed as them backstage with like Chris Martin and like, Jack, like it was ridiculous. Like it was like the hippest people, Nirvana was reuniting. It was ridiculous. And we're dressed as these like middle school music teachers with like dopey, wig. And And then the fact that they just would have been, we wrote it sort of with the intention of like, they couldn't believe they were at Radio City.
Yeah.
You know, just owning the situation. So it was so fun. So fun.
Did you ever hear from any of the like the Doechis or the Kendrick about like what the perception was?
Not Kendrick, but wouldn't that be hilarious? It did really well virally, obviously, and people of course responded and things like Doechii didn't respond either. Actually, now that you say that, maybe she did somewhere. I mean, it literally got like 1 billion hits. Or something.
Went everywhere.
Yeah, it was crazy.
It was so funny because I mean, SNL is such a sort of gap as a British person because you sort of know it, but when I moved here, I was suddenly like, oh, this is like an institution in a way, and so I didn't.
That's why I don't work in London. Yeah, we have to change this.
I know you've got to go to. Well, they've got SNL in London now as well.
Yeah, I know. It's exciting.
Interesting seeing.
Yeah,
how it's
my
doing.
friend Humphrey writes for them.
Oh, really? And is he enjoying it?
Yeah.
It's doing well, I think.
Yeah.
So we're going to get you on the West End in London.
Yeah, that's the plan.
We're manifesting it.
We're little princessing it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. But no, I thought the Bobby and Marley was so good. It was iconic. Well, maybe next we can talk about The Forgotten Girls by Monica Potts.
Oh, this is a real downer.
Woo.
Sorry, I had to throw in something smarty.
It's amazing though. I loved it.
I loved it. And my friend Jill recommended it. She's my second big writing reader. She's also a writer. She's my first writing partner from Northwestern. She's a comedy writer and a memoirist in her own right, and a short story writer, and just a wonderful writer. And she reads at the pace of my daughter. The two of them are my go-to for recommendations. And it came, sort of post-election reflection, as a lot of us did at the various phases we've gone through in the last 10 years. And I have a number of books that I think, and plays actually, I think Sweat by Lynn Nottage also really talks about what happened in America in a very kind of effective way, the loss of the American dream and sort of how we've become so tribalized. And obviously there's been a lot of like American cultural reflection on forgotten people and people who are not seen and taken care of culturally. And Jill, I don't really remember why it came up, but the rural urban divide is actually huge, in America. And I wanted what I was so struck by. I'm not a very religious person, and I'm very suspicious of deep fundamentalism in any religion. I'm pro spirituality and faith and hope, but the thing that really moved me about Forgotten Girls, so it's a really well written, I thought, social analysis of from the point of view of somebody who was raised in rural Arkansas, who got out, for lack of a better way of putting it, who came to New York and was educated and had sort of, and her best friend who grew up with very similar intellect, very similar potential, and was taken by so many of the scourges of economic disaster in those parts of the country where there's very little job opportunity, and there's a lot of drug addiction from the sort of collusion of the opiate crisis and the lack of educational opportunity, the family tie stuff that's really legitimate and hard for people to navigate, and with things as practical as like poor internet access in poor and rural parts of the country where people actually can't like get online education because they literally cannot get on the internet. Like some of those things are such overt deterrents to, if you want to stay in Arkansas, which is a totally worthwhile and meaningful thing to do so you can stay close to your family, but also get your education, the opportunities become more and more and more challenging. And as we know, that is what sort of strengthens this divide, which has really become hard to navigate. And the thing that I think the sort of like really secret kind of divisive and difficult part is the role that really intense fundamental Christianity plays in telling girls what they are supposed to be capable of, opportunities to them. So to me that it made me think, I guess. And it made me think about, it's so easy to sort of go like, oh, look at those hicks, and be dismissive. And I've read about the opiate crisis. Like I've read a number of books, that I'm sure you've read, that everybody's read. I've read about, Forgotten America and Flyover Country.
Yes.
But I really hadn't thought about the real obstacles facing some of those young women. And it moved me in a very profound way. So I just wanted to talk about it here because it is Bustle and it is a female forward platform, but also I just think there's work to be done.
I agree.
In a lot of different ways.
Yeah. It makes it so human. That's the thing I thought, is that you hear people talking about these like cultural trends that have left America where it is now. And then when you see them with a name on them and with like parents who have gone through these, it makes it so you can't look away. Yeah. You can't look away in the way that it's easy to, and it feels like an abstract idea.
Yeah. I've honestly, I had Demon Copperhead as the first one. I'm sure you have covered that many times. And that book did a really good job in the sense she's such a fantastic writer, Kingsolver. But that initially, I think that made the sort of story of addiction, specifically rural addiction, very meaningful to the people. But this is a real story about real people in real Arkansas right now.
Totally.
You know, and girls, which I also think is nice. It's just, it's truly a demographic that's just like at the bottom of the pecking order.
I know. Did you ever have that feeling growing up of wanting to like get out of where you'd grown up? Or
I grew up with so much opportunity. Yeah. I mean, I grew up in a city in Washington, D.C. We weren't like loaded, but my parents, I mean, especially now that I look at it, like they spent all their additional resources on arts outreach. Yeah. We were given opportunities. And again, there were a lot of things. We had free city orchestra. I was in city orchestra. I was in choir. I did, all the things that I had a lot of access to things like that. So like I said, it wasn't like hyper fancy silver spoon, but I grew up in DC. Yeah. So it was just, we had the arts everywhere. Yeah. And I also grew up in a family. I went to the White House. Yeah. I grew up in a family. My mother's parents were immigrants. My father's parents settled here a long, long time ago, or 1800s. But my grandmother was the first, she was in the teacher's college at the University of Nebraska, and she was the first woman to petition the dean to finish her education after she got married. Oh, good. So my family was very, I'm very biased towards the power of education, and I loved my education. I feel grateful for it. I feel undereducated even as an educated person. I know there's a lot I don't know. I know that there's other ways to do that. I know that there's now a different trend. I know that there are people who are, I understand, like, if you are really good at, like, want to be an electrician and you come from a family that's really good at that, like, you should do that. I don't have like a judgment about it, but I always knew that was not even, it wasn't even an option. It was like, you were going to go to college. Yeah. It didn't matter sort of how or where, but it was not an option.
No, I was the same for me. My dad's from Birmingham, and his mom was very, very bright. And so she was born in 1919. And so in 1930, when she took the 11 plus, which is the test that they all take, she passed it so well that the head teacher from the school came down and was like, please, can she like come to the secondary school? But you had to pay money. And so they were like, no, she's going to work. And then I remember when she came to my graduation, when I graduated from Oxford, and I was so thrilled that she was there, and because it had always been presented to me of like, of course you're gonna go. Yeah. But I wondered if it must have felt weird as well, because she would talk about that experience of not having been able to go, and even to secondary school basically.
I know.
It's crazy.
I know, and I get it. Like, school's not for everybody. No. But that's also where books are so amazing. Yeah. I don't know if you're like, my algorithm feeds me all these readers. Yes, I don't know. Same. Like, it's so satisfying. Yeah. And they're just like people from all, who just talk about books that they love. Yeah. And I do feel like we're having a little bit of a like, happy book resurgence where, anyway.
I thought also that book is so interesting on the sort of power of mentorship, because she talks a lot about how important that is to keep people going. And I was curious, who have been big mentors for you in your career?
Oh, I didn't think that was where that was going. No, I was thinking about how basic mentorship is, like, and we forget these things. To me, it was a good reminder. So here she grows up in rural Arkansas. I don't remember why, but she applied to Barnard. And she got in, but she couldn't afford to go. Yeah. And she picked up a landline and called. And how hard a thing that is to think to do. I know. And how mentorship includes things like ask. Yes. It's okay. Don't be embarrassed. I always say to my children, like, I try to model this. If I don't know a vocabulary word in a conversation, I try to just simply say, what does that mean?
Yes.
Because I think we feel like we're supposed to be like smart and present and all this. And there is nothing wrong with not knowing.
Yes.
You know? And anyway, so I often think the best mentorship is some of that most basic stuff. Like my daughter will say like, should I text and say thank you for that opportunity? And just being like, absolutely. Everybody likes a thank you, you know, or it doesn't have to be thirsty. It doesn't have to be, I think sometimes it feels rehearsed, but sometimes you can just say like, hey, that was really interesting and thank you for taking the time, you know, or whatever. So for me, mentors have been, that's a great question. And I'm stumped. I've had, I think in the arts, it's so assumed that you're going to fail that I had a few random people along the way, of course, teachers, always teachers, some that were mean, but the ones that were like, the one that wrote my recommendation for Northwestern was my drama, my like director in high school. And I asked him, and my drama teacher, he was a very quiet, reserved guy. And I was really intimidated by him. But when he handed me my sealed, you weren't allowed to open it, was sealed, in the old days, recommendation, they would give it to you with a seal and then you would mail it off. He said, I really think that you should do this for a living. I think you could do this for a living.
Oh, wow.
And that meaning acting. And even though technically I was applying to the music school, but I think he thought I was applying as an actress. And just having those moments of that, you know, and then my voice teacher said to my mother, hilariously, at my graduation party, I think she'll work in musical theater. And my mother said, musical theater. She was horrified. But those moments, those people who just sort of go, I think that you might actually be good at this, you know? And there was actually a woman who worked in administration, Fiona Valentine, and she was British, and at Northwestern, and I'd done like a student film. I'd never thought about working in film and television ever, but I'd done like my friends, like, you know, shows and movies, and she said, she was like, you should work in film and television. You're very good on camera. Again, like I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. And then somebody said, hey, do you want to move to LA? And I did.
I love
because
that.
Fiona Valentine had said that I should.
Yeah. But also there's like I mean, obviously it goes all like this and everything, but from that, that teacher saying, I think you should do this to work to Tony nomination. It's just like, it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. It's amazing.
It is amazing.
And then I have sort of a council of elders, a number of Broadway directors and a few just trusted friends that I call about every job. And I'll sort of like survey a sampling to say like, what do we think? And I mean, big jobs like Schmigadoon.
Yeah. And do they ever disagree, or are they normally in alignment? They
sometimes disagree.
Yeah. Interesting.
I mean, but you make jobs decisions are always a weird balance of like, how much time am I not going to see my kids? How much money am I going to make and make it worth it while? Or art. You know, you always have to have one thing in check. Like,
totally.
What's the one good reason?
Yeah.
Like, is it because it's the most artistic challenge? Is it because it's the most fun?
Yeah.
Now I'm gratefully at a stage where I'm like, are there assholes?
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, but seriously, that's a good question.
It's like the top question.
Time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I have to ask, because this obviously is a book about girlhood, and when I was growing up, Mean Girls was the definitive movie of my like childhood about girlhood. Can you tell me about that experience of being on that set?
It's always so funny because you're like, when you do a movie, it's so short, and then it becomes this like piece of iconic history. Frances was there. She was a baby.
Oh, really?
And anytime you make something, well, Tina has the specific skill. It's really extraordinary of capturing these moments culturally. I mean, like mom jeans and like, you know, she's just got this ear for things that become memes or are iconic or whatever the words are that kids use now. But I also will say that anytime you're writing about high school, it's Bobby and Marty, right? Like everyone hates high school. Everyone loves high school.
Yeah.
And high school's funny.
Yes.
High school's just funny. I'm in another movie coming out called Never Change about a bunch of 40-year-olds who have to go back to high school to get their diplomas because of a like clerical error. And I play the principal who's like, why are all these 40-year-olds here? And it's just funny. because it's the first, this is, as I can say as a parent of adolescents, recent adolescents, it's the first time everything's happening.
Yes.
Like by the time you're 40, you've had your heart broken 5,000 times. By the time you're 40, you've, whatever, accidentally shit your pants on the ski slopes. I don't know, like anything that happens in high school, it's like the absolute worst, it's the worst thing that ever happened all the time.
Yeah.
It's the biggest and most my son, they were doing senior skip day because he's a senior. And it was like the conversations about, well, maybe I'll just go to history and maybe I'll, back and forth. It was like literally the most important monumentous decision of his life.
It's everything is big at that age.
You're building all of your feelings are big because your hormones are big, but also you're building all of your resources and banking all your memories and like learning your lines for life,
Totally. Also, how amazing the young cast from that movie, what they've all gone on, like Lindsay, Lohan, and Rachel McAdams and Amanda Seyfried. I know. How old were they on set? They must have been I guess they were teenagers or 20s?
Lindsay still had a guardian.
Really?
Yeah.
So young?
Yeah, young, really young. By like right on the line. And maybe like 19.
And were you on SNL when Lindsay did her hosting stints as well? Oh, that would have been...
I was gone already. Yeah. But she was a star. I mean, that was pretty evident.
Yes.
That was a major star.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm really excited. We had a cover with her a couple of years ago, and our headline was just "Lindsay's back," and I love it. It's amazing seeing everything that she's
wild
doing. Well, finally, we can talk about the play "Everybody" by Brandon Jacobs Jenkins, which is your fourth pick. Tell me what you love about that.
Okay, so I think he's an amazing play. I read plays a lot. I find them to be. They're also plays continue. They don't always do this, but they often have to live by really interesting narrative device and code. Like they have rules, and some of it is people break some of those rules, and that's modern playwriting for you. But really, in general, to see a play and to have a cathartic experience and to relate to it, or at least my favorite plays, they tend to live within they're very well crafted. And the thing that I love about reading plays is because they're so terse by nature, every word is considered.
Yes.
Every word is considered. And I love the economy of that. I find it really compelling. And I think Brendan Jacob Jenkins is a wonderful writer, and I think he manages to talk about emotional it's Long Island. I don't know if you saw Appropriate last year, but
yes, my God, loved.
It was incredible. I almost picked that one. That's why I went back and forth.
No, I just literally have on my card here, Appropriate. Wow.
Yeah. Because again, he manages to talk about huge cultural issues, huge American societal issues, but family dynamic and all in one. It like gives me chills even just saying it. The craftsmanship is just amazing. I'm really taken because of my experience right now. So let me just say, Everybody is a play that he wrote in the teens, 20 teens maybe. And it was off Broadway, and we saw it there. A friend of ours was the lighting designer, so we saw it. But then my daughter, Frances, did it at Northwestern. So I recently saw it again. It's based on the
15th century
morality play, The Everyman, which is like one of those boring plays that you study in college, and that they make you do and draw, like with the Greeks and everything. And Frances has really dialed me into. She understands the classics very well. So like when you go see Hadestown with her, she explains the different interpretations of the different readings. But the mythology, and I don't know if you saw Oedipus this year, like again, like I'm fascinated by the Greeks, and by as much as I found those things stultifyingly boring when I was having to read them, the adaptations and the sort of the fact that for thousands of centuries human beings have essentially battled with the same issues and same family dynamics and same sadnesses and greed, and Shakespeare, same thing. There's something so human and connected about adaptations. So to say, I'm also in a play right now, Schmigadoon, which is not a Greek tragedy by any stretch of the imagination, but it is a very communal theater experience.
Yes.
And what is so fun about Schmigadoon is that our audiences are so engaged and feel so consumed by wanting, every day someone says like, I want to live in Schmigadoon, because it feels like you're living in like your idea of what a high school old-timey musical theater town is. There's every happy part about it. The town is bright and colorful. It is not cynical. It is not mean. It calls out in a really modern and funny way some of the limitations of that, very entrenched thinking, but it's very joy-filled. And I'm very taken with theater that is engaging to people, that makes them feel like they're a part of the story, that they're living with you. There's a mayoral election in our play. Our play so grabs people that people are often voting. In the audience, I will look out and they are voting for my opponent. I play the bad guy. So what everybody did, which is really cool, is basically Brendan Jacob Jenkins took the Everyman, he adapted it to modern times. So there are these, the Everyman sort of tells this morality story of like the conflict of our various attributes. So we have friendship, we have love, we have kinship, and it's all anticipating towards death, right? So how many of these things are meaningful, and how many of them are we independent of, and how many are integrated, I think is how you would put it. And the play, it's that struggle. So how many of these things do we need to say were important before we die, and how can we say that we've had a full and fulfilled life? I think that's what I would say the play is about. But what's wild is he had every actor, the conceit is that every actor, because we are an everyman, every person inhabits all of these really complex attributes. Every actor learned every track. And he had a big bingo ball machine. The audience was participating in it, and they would call out they would pull it out, and different people would play different tracks every night. My daughter did it in college, and it is so compelling because as an artistic experience, to have an ensemble that engaged with your audience, playing that many different kinds of roles is just thrilling. We talked about Every Brilliant Thing as well, the other play that Dan Radcliffe just finished here on Broadway. And it's a similar thing where the audience is so engaged, right? I just love theater that does that. I think it's really, really important. And actually in September Davis, my arch rival or whatever, she's got a piece coming that's very much about her connection to the audience as well. And I'm very interested in that kind of theater.
Yeah, it is. It's fascinating. And Schmigadoon, it is so compelling. And I felt like when I was watching it, I was almost being transported into a whole different mental state in my own brain. I thought the sets as well were so beautiful and so... like the lighting, all of it was exquisite. The lighting is so beautiful, and it's so integrated with the sets, and it's so analog. It's all hand painted. Wow.
They're hand painted flats, like traditional. It's really transporting. It takes you to another. It's like living. When we first saw the set, I was like, I feel like I'm like living like on Main Street in Disneyland or something, like, exactly. Like you feel like you're living in that place where you wanted to live.
It's like, it's so immersive as well because of how how big in the color and the music and the dancing and like, I mean, I loved it all.
14 pieces in the orchestra.
Wow. Yes.
There's instruments we often don't hear live anymore. There's, what I call comedy instruments, there's a lot of like bassoon, and there's a vibraphone, which is so magical. Every night he plays it. And this one sequence is so beautiful. The orchestrations are fantastic. And then the costumes, your English, the British, I don't know what I'm supposed to say. What's the PC? This Liberty of London fabric on a lot of the girls' dresses. I want to I said to Linda, our costume designer, I was like, do you have any scraps? I feel like I need like a little pillow of all of the girls' costumes. Their women's costumes are so beautiful.
I also just loved the age diversity of the casting because there's something so joyful about seeing like an older not old, but like older gentleman doing these like dances and really going for it. Yeah.
It's brilliant. It's a true love letter to musical theater.
Yeah, I'm so excited for you guys with the Tonys, and I'm keeping everything crossed for you.
Thank you so much.
And this was so fun, and thank you for bringing such brilliant books to talk about.
I hope they're compelling and interesting.
It was definitely. We've got loads of stuff. It's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Charlotte.
Thank you.